pack your bags tonight. You are going back to Ekiti. You are evicted from my house.
The slap lands before the last word leaves her mouth. Teniola Balogun's head snaps sideways. Champagne glasses freeze mid-air. Somewhere near the band, a thorn rises to record. Tenny's cheek burns, but she does not cry out. She kneels, slowly, deliberately, and begins to adjust the wrapper that has slipped from her shoulder. The wrapper of a woman who has spent 5 years cooking, cleaning, and swallowing insults in a house she does not know she owns.
Mommy, God bless you. Let me go and pack.
Chief Mrs. Victoria Balogun straightens her gele, satisfied, as her guests murmur behind their fans. She has no idea that in exactly 11 minutes, 3 black SUVs will turn into her compound and end everything she believes about her own life. But to understand how Tenny got to her knees on that marble floor, you have to go back 5 years, to a girl from Ekiti who had already built and sold an empire before anyone in Lagos ever learned her name. Tenny grew up in a 2-room face me I face you in Ado Ekiti, the last of 4 children, the only one who preferred numbers to noise. Her mother sold provisions by the roadside. Her father drove a commercial bus until his knees gave out. There was no money for extra lessons, so Tenny taught herself to code from library computers that timed out every 30 minutes, writing lines in a notebook first so she wouldn't waste the clock typing.
This girl and her computer wahala. Will computer marry you?
Tenny would just smile. She had already decided that computers would do something better than marry her. They would free her. By 22, working out of a shared room in Yaba with 3 other developers who lived on Gary and ambition, Tenny built a small payment app that let market women without bank accounts save money safely on their phones. Investors laughed at the pitch. One man in a Victoria Island boardroom told her, without looking up from his phone, that nobody was going to trust a village girl with their money app. Another said her idea was too small, too local to matter. She kept building anyway. 2 years later, a Fintech giant in London bought the app for $40 million. Tenny signed the papers in a lawyer's office in Lekki, alone in the same worn sandals she wore to that humiliating pitch meeting. She told no one outside her immediate family, no press release, no interviews. She had learned in the hardest way that visibility invites vultures.
But here is the thing about money that comes suddenly, Poppy. It doesn't heal what people did to you before you had it. It just gives you room to decide what to do with the memory.
She used part of the money to quietly purchase a mansion on Banana Island through a private trust called Oluwatishe Holdings, registered in London, her name nowhere visible on the documents. It was simply an investment, a beautiful piece of real estate leased out to whoever could afford the rent. She had no plans to ever live in it herself. Then she met Femi Balogun. Femi was warm in a way that surprised her, attentive, funny, seemingly unbothered by status. He worked in his father's oil servicing company, drove a car older than his mother would have liked, and laughed easily at himself. He did not know when he asked Femi to marry her after 8 months of courtship that she was worth more than his entire family's visible net worth combined. She did not tell him. She wanted for once to be loved for herself and not for what she could give.
And honestly, I just want to know if a family can accept me with nothing. If they can't, at least I'll know the truth early.
She would get her answer faster than she expected. Chief Mrs. Victoria Balogun met her new daughter-in-law and decided within 4 minutes that Tenny was beneath her family. Victoria was Lagos society royalty in her own mind, a woman who tied the tallest gele at every Ewambe, who name-dropped senators at her appointments, who believed the Balogun name still carried the weight it had 20 years ago before her husband's company started drowning quietly in debt that she refused to acknowledge.
She is from Ekiti. Femi has married a village girl. But it's fine. I will train her small.
The training began the week the couple moved into the Banana Island mansion, the very mansion Temi secretly owned. Victoria, unaware, insisted the young couple live under her roof to learn family values. Within a month, she had dismissed both stewards and the cook, telling her society friends she was cutting costs like everyone else in this economy, while privately assigning every domestic duty to Temi.
You people from the village are used to hard work. This will not kill you.
Temi cooked. She cleaned. She served. She smiled through her teeth while Victoria introduced her to guests as the girl Femi picked from the village, never once using her name. At parties, Temi carried trays between women wearing outfits that cost less than the shoes on her own feet, hidden in a wardrobe upstairs that no one in that house had ever opened. Femi saw it. Femi always saw it. And every time he opened his mouth to object, his mother's voice would rise like a wall.
Is it this girl that wants to separate me from my own son? I did not carry you for 9 months for a village girl to turn you against your mother.
Femi would close his mouth. Temi would watch him close his mouth, and something in her chest would go a little quieter each time.
But here is the thing about silence, Hyde. People think it means you have accepted your position. Sometimes it just means you are counting.
She was in fact counting, watching, learning exactly who her mother-in-law was underneath the gold jewelry and the loud laughter. A woman terrified of losing status she no longer actually had, propping up a collapsing empire with borrowed money and borrowed pride. 5 years passed this way. 5 years of jollof rice cooked in pots too heavy for one person, of being called housegirl in front of strangers, of Femi's silence becoming a second kind of wound. Temi's own fintech instincts told her something the Balogons didn't know about themselves. Their oil servicing company was bleeding money, propped up on loans against assets that were quietly being sold off one by one. She had watched enough company filings in her old life to recognize the smell of a business already dying. She said nothing. Not yet. The turn came on an ordinary Tuesday, the kind of day nobody remembers until it becomes the day everything changed. Temi's lawyer in London, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Adaora Chukwu, who managed Oluwatishe Holdings on her behalf, called with quiet urgency.
Temi, the Balogun family, the ones leasing the Banana Island property, they're 2 years behind on rent. Do you want us to proceed with legal action?
Temi sat very still on the edge of her bed, the same bed she cleaned every morning in a house she owned, and let out a breath she had been holding for 5 years.
Send me the file. All of it.
That night, for the first time since her wedding, Temi opened her old laptop, the one with the cracked corner she'd carried from Ekiti to Yaba to Lekki to this gilded prison. She read every document: the unpaid rent, the Balogun company's mounting debts, the quiet sale of 2 family properties in the last year alone, sold to cover salaries the company could no longer pay. Victoria didn't know any of this, or perhaps she knew and refused to believe it, the way people refuse to believe a house is on fire until the smoke reaches their own room. Temi closed the laptop and made a decision that had been building silently for 5 years. She would not expose the family out of spite. She would let the truth arrive on its own timeline, but she would no longer protect them from the consequences of their choices. She called Adaora back. Temi, proceed with formal notice. Give them 90 days. And Adaora, quietly find out who's buying up the Balogun company's debt. If it's still available, I want it. You want to buy your own in-laws' business debt? I want to own my own story for once. The 90 days moved differently for each of them. For Victoria, they moved in denial. She ignored the lawyer's letters, tossing them into a drawer, convinced her connections would make the problem disappear the way problems always had. For Femi, the days moved in dread, watching his father's face grow grayer each week as calls came in that he wouldn't take at the dinner table. For Temi, the days moved in quiet preparation. She began attending fewer family functions, citing tiredness. She used the time instead to finalize the acquisition of the Balogun Oil Servicing Company's outstanding debt through a separate holding entity, invisible, untraceable back to her name unless someone knew exactly where to look. Adara handled the paperwork with the discretion of a surgeon. Victoria noticed Temi's growing distance and rather than reflection chose suspicion. This girl is planning something ever since she started disappearing into her room with that laptop. You know these small girls and their internet schemes. Victoria, our real problem is not Temi's laptop. Have you seen these letters? Don't worry yourself with
lawyer nonsense. I will handle it. I always handle it. She handled it by planning a party. Not just any party. Her 60th birthday. The biggest Owambe Banana Island had seen that year. An event designed in her mind to remind Lagos society that the Baloguns were still exactly who they had always claimed to be. She ordered a new gele taller than the last. She ordered a soebi for 200 guests. She ordered Temi to plan the menu, source the caterers on a shoestring budget, and personally oversee the service, since, in her words, they didn't have staff for this kind of number. Temi, Mommy, this is a lot for one person. Victoria, one person? Temi, is it not because of you that we don't have staff? If you were adding real value to this family instead of hiding in your room, maybe things would be different. Just do as I say. Femi, standing in the doorway, said nothing. Temi looked at him for a long moment, long enough that he finally looked away in shame, and then she nodded. Yes, Mommy, I'll handle it. She had already decided the party would be handled. Just not the way Victoria imagined. The morning of the party, the Balogun compound transformed. Canopies bloomed across the compound lawn in gold and wine red. A live band tuned their instruments near the fountain. Caterers Temi had quietly arranged, paid for, though no one asked from whose account, filled trays with jollof rice, asun and grilled fish. Victoria moved through it all like a queen, inspecting her coronation, adjusting flower arrangements, backing instructions, glowing with the kind of pride that comes from believing the world still owes you its admiration. By evening, Banana Island's finest arrived in convoys. Society women in asoebi so heavily beaded they walked like ships, businessmen trailing assistants, a senator's wife who air-kissed Victoria twice for the cameras. Tini moved among them in a simple black service apron, carrying trays, refilling glasses, invisible in the way the wealthy make the people who serve them invisible. A guest. Who is that girl serving drinks? Another. Ah, that's Femi's wife now, the one Victoria picked from the village. You know Victoria, always doing charity work in her own house. Tini's hand did not shake as she poured the wine. She had built and sold an empire while these same kinds of voices told her a village girl could not be trusted with money. She had survived worse rooms than this one. Then it happened. As Tini refilled Victoria's glass near the head table, a small drop of champagne slipped from the bottle's lip and landed on the hem of Victoria's new lace gown, a garment that cost more than most of the catering budget combined. The compound went quiet before Victoria even opened her mouth. You stupid girl! Look what you've done! On my new lace! On my birthday! Tini, Mommy, I'm sorry, let me... The slap came before Tini could finish. The sound cracked across the compound like a dropped plate. Guests gasped. Phones rose. Victoria, drunk on humiliation and champagne and 5 years of unchecked cruelty, did not stop. Look at this wretched girl. Look at your legs like hunger. God punished the day Femi brought you into my palace. Pack your bags tonight. You are going back to Ekiti. You are evicted from my house. Tini knelt slowly, deliberately. She touched her stinging cheek, adjusted her wrapper, and looked up at the woman who had spent 5 years calling her nothing. "Mommy, God bless you. Let me go and pack." She rose and walked toward the guest chalet, every eye on the compound following her, some in pity, most in judgment. Femi sat frozen at the head table, his father's hand gripping his shoulder, not in comfort, but in warning to stay silent, the same warning that had defined his entire marriage. 11 minutes, that's all it took. Just as Victoria composed herself and turned toward the 6-tier cake glittering under the canopy lights, the low growl of engines cut through the compound. 3 black SUVs swept through the gates, headlights sweeping across 200 stunned faces. Doors opened in unison. Men in dark suits stepped out, followed by uniformed police officers, followed by a tall, composed woman in a sharp navy suit who moved like she owned every square inch of ground beneath her. "Victoria, what is the meaning of this? Who invited police to my party? Do you know who I am? I am Chief Mrs. Victoria Balogun. Somebody should call my husband's lawyer this instant." The woman in navy walked directly to the band's abandoned microphone, tapped it once, and spoke with the calm precision of someone who has done this many times before.
Good evening. My name is Barrister Adaora Chukwu, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, representing Oluwatise Holdings. This property is under a court-ordered seizure for non-payment of lease obligations totaling over 150 million naira across the past 24 months.
All occupants are required to vacate within the time frame specified in the document I am about to distribute. Gasps rippled through the crowd like wind through canopies. Victoria's face went the color of the lace she'd been so furious about minutes ago. "Victoria, this is a mistake. We don't even know who this landlord is. Tell your Oga to come and meet me face to face if he has the guts. I will not be disrespected in my own compound." Barrister Chukwu: "With respect, ma, the landlord is present." The guest chalet door opened. Tenny stepped out. She was no longer wearing the black service apron. She wore a jaw-dropping traditional attire, hand-beaded, diamonds catching the string lights like scattered stars, her posture entirely different from the woman who had knelt on that floor 11 minutes earlier. 2 quiet, capable-looking security personnel flanked her, though she needed no protection from anyone in that garden, only their presence to make the moment unmistakable. A confused murmur swept through the crowd. Someone dropped a glass. "Tenny, Mommy, why are you shouting?" Victoria stared, mouth opening and closing without sound. "Tenny, the landlord is right here, and your 24 hours to pack out start now." The compound fell into the kind of silence that has weight, that presses down on shoulders. Victoria's society friends, moments ago laughing behind their fans, now stared at Tenny as though seeing her for the first time, because in truth, they were. "Victoria, this is not possible. This girl works for me. She cooks in my kitchen. She is nobody." "Tenny, I am the sole owner of Oluwatise Holdings. I purchased this property 4 years before I ever met your son. I have paid every tax, every levy, every obligation on this land since the day it became mine. And for the last 2 years, I have watched your family fail to pay rent on a house I built from nothing while you called me a house girl in front of your friends." Barrister Chukwu stepped forward and handed Victoria a folder. Victoria's hands trembled as she opened it. The property deeds, the ownership trail leading unmistakably to Teniola Balogun, Ne Adeyemi of Ado Ekiti. "Tenny, there's more, Mommy. Your husband's company owes over 200 million naira across 3 lenders. I bought that debt 6 weeks ago. Every asset this family has left, I now have a claim to." Chief Balogun, silent until now, sank into a chair, his face collapsing into his hands. Femi rushed forward, dropping to his knees in front of Tenny, gripping the hem of her attire. "Femi, Tenny, please. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Please don't do this to my family." "Tenny, I have watched you know for 5 years and say nothing. Every time your mother called me a house girl, every time she raised her hand near me, every time she told you I used juju to control your mind, you knew. You just chose silence because silence was easier than standing beside your wife." The crowd, phones still recording, had gone utterly still, drinking in a scene no Owambe photographer could have staged. Victoria, true to Nollywood form, swayed and collapsed dramatically onto the nearest chair, fanned frantically by a niece, while the police calmly began the process of documenting the property handover. No one rushed to carry her boxes for her. By the next afternoon, movers were carrying out generations of Balogun furniture under Barrister Chukwu's watchful supervision, while Victoria sat on the compound steps. Gele gone, gold jewelry was the only thing she had insisted on packing first. Femi did not go with his mother immediately. He sat outside the gate for hours, waiting, hoping Tenny would come out and tell her it was a misunderstanding, that they could rebuild. When she finally did step outside, it was Barrister Chukwu who spoke first, then stepped back to let Tenny approach him herself. Tenny, I'm not going to pretend the last 5 years didn't happen, Femi. You loved me, I believe that. But love that stays silent while someone you claim to love is humiliated, that is not enough to build a life on. Femi, what do you want me to do? Tenny, grow up. You and your mother can find a place on the mainland. I won't leave you homeless, I'm not her. But this marriage, if it continues at all, is on probation until you show me you can be a husband, not just a son. Victoria, from a distance, said nothing. There was, for once in her life, nothing left to say that anyone would believe. Weeks later, Lagos society had already moved on to its next scandal, as Lagos society always does. But something had shifted permanently in the story people told about the Balogun name, no longer whispered with envy, but with a kind of cautionary amusement. You remember the woman who called her billionaire daughter-in-law a housegirl was a phrase people used at parties for months, usually followed by laughter that had nothing kind in it. Tenny kept the mansion. She hired back the stewards Victoria had dismissed years earlier, paid them what they were actually worth, and turned one wing of the property into a foundation supporting young women from towns like Ekiti who wanted to build something with nothing but a library card and stubbornness. The very thing no investor had believed in when she was 22 years old with a notebook full of code. Chief Balogun and Tenny settled into a modest flat on the mainland, the kind of face me I face you confound Victoria had once mocked in passing conversation, never imagining her own name would end up attached to one. She did not apologize publicly. Some people never do. But neighbors said she had grown quieter, that the gele had gotten smaller, that the loudness that once filled every room she entered had thinned into something closer to silence. The same silence she had once forced on someone else. On a warm evening months later, Tenny sat in a wide armchair in the courtyard of the mansion she had always owned, now finally living in it as herself. No apron, no lowered eyes, a steward poured her a glass of chilled wine. She took a slow sip, looked toward the camera as if speaking to someone she trusted completely, and smiled, not with triumph, but with something quieter and harder won than that. Tenny, they thought I was the house girl, not knowing I owned the estate. Music. But here is the thing about people who make you small to feel big. Sooner or later, life shows them exactly how small they really were. Tenny's story isn't really about mansions or millions. It's about every woman who has ever been underestimated in her own home, who smiled through humiliation while quietly building something nobody could see. If you've ever been treated like you are less than you are, you already know. The truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs time. So tell me, if you were Tenny, kneeling on that floor after the slap, would you have exposed everything that same night? Or would you have waited the way she did and let the truth arrive on its own terms? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to know what you would have done.